welcome. This meeting is for the college and departmental liaisons or administrators who work on the reappointment, promotion, and tenure process. My name is Amy Jinnette, Associate Vice Provost for Academic Affairs in the Provost Office. I believe my colleague Kim Grainger is going to be joining me. And we'll do some brief introductions of our panelists shortly. I did want to mention that Catherine Stewart, unfortunately, Senior Vice Provost for Faculty and Academic Affairs, will not be able to join us today. So I'll do the best I can to answer any questions you might have. And I also wanted to mention that today's meeting format is sort of a new thing that we're doing this year. It's a hybrid between the annual town hall meeting that Dan and David used to do or have done in the past for all RPT online users. And then the more targeted sort of meeting that the provost office would hold each year with college RPT liaisons. So we're capturing a broader audience here, but I do think there'll be something useful for all of you. And thank you again for joining us. So we're dividing this webinar into 3 parts. And I believe after each part, we'll be able to pause to see if there are any questions. And if you could please use the Q&A feature to submit any questions you have, we'll take a look at those. Before we get started, I'd just like to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. Again, I'm Amy Jinnette, Associate Vice Provost in the Provost Office, and I'm joined by, perfect timing, Kim Grainger. Kim, thank you for joining us. We're just doing our introductions. If you'd like to introduce yourself. But we can't hear you, or I can't hear you. Sorry.
I'm muted. I'm sorry.
It's all right. I put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Grainger, Associate Vice Provost for Academic Personnel and Policy.
Okay. Sherrie and Bruce.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Sherrie Settle, Associate Vice Chancellor for Sponsored Programs and Regulatory Compliance with my colleague, Bruce Limon. Bruce.
Hi, Bruce Limon. I am IT Director for Sparks.
Thank you. And Dan and David.
I'm Dan Green, Director of IT and Operations for Electrical and Computer Engineering. We run the RPT online system for the campus. David.
Hello, I'm David. I'm the primary developer for RPT Online.
Thank you all. So we'll quickly go over the items we're hoping to cover today. So Kim and I will kind of go over some process reminders and guidance for this upcoming cycle. We'll ask Sherrie and Bruce to speak to the radar to red transition, which obviously impacts section 3B of the dossier. And then lastly, RPT online enhancements. We'll ask Dan and David to sort of walk us through those for this year. So in terms of process reminders, the 3 ones that I specifically wanted to highlight, COVID impact statements will again be an option this cycle. That affects section 1C of the dossier. This is optional, of course. And we have said we will give at least 2 years notice before we discontinue this option. So you can count on this being an option for at least the next 2 cycles. We might have discussions this year about timing, but as of now, we have not set a timeline to discontinue this option. So at least for 2 more cycles. And I did just want to share that about 45% of the dossier submitted last year utilized the COVID impact statement in one way or another. So people are using it. The feedback we've gotten from the university committee in particular has been that these have been helpful. So again, that's an option this year. Again, we'll talk more in a moment about the radar to red reporting transition. Section 3B of the dossier. I did want to just mention in limited circumstances, because we have had this question, we will still accept radar in the dossier for 23-24. And most commonly, this is going to be if the radar report was generated maybe late spring, early summer. It's generated and put into the dossier, which was then provided to external evaluators. In those circumstances, that's fine. We'll keep that for this year, but going forward, obviously that will not be an option, and we'll talk more about that shortly. The new template for requesting external evaluators is now required. And so you might be thinking, wait a minute, there's another new template. No, this template, this is actually the second year that we're requiring this new template. But some colleges did not have P&T cases last year. So we did want to put this reminder here for those folks who may not have had to generate this template letter for a couple years. And so that's a reminder to them that you need to download the new one. Don't just go into your computer and pull up the one from a couple years ago, because it has changed, and you do need to use the new one that's online. Just a couple of things we wanted to mention. Obviously, we've had a few leadership transitions. I think almost every college has been touched by a new department head or college dean or both. So we have welcomed 3 new deans this summer, Deans Fox, Owen, and Bettner. We have at least 18 new department heads on board since the spring and the summer. Which is quite a big number. We hope to have RPT online updated accordingly in terms of the new deans and the new department head names, but if not, obviously let us know. And just to point out to remember the resources available to our new leadership. We have our roles and responsibilities page on our RPT site. We also have a new department heads orientation that Catherine's office is working on September 11th. We'll have our annual RPT information session in the spring of next year. Last spring's or spring of 23's session is online if anyone would like to take a look at that. And then obviously we like to remind everyone to work through the college RPT liaisons and then have the college liaisons reach out to us. And that just keeps everyone on the same page and everyone hearing the same information. And we found that process works the best. So happy to help wherever we can, but if we can loop in from the department to the college to the provost office, that seems to help matters. I did want to mention while we're talking about RPT online that there are still a few numbers of departments that are not using RPT online to share dossiers with the DBF. This is not a requirement for use at the department level. However, we feel like there are a lot of good reasons to use it. Obviously, security being one, consistency, and I'm sure Dan and David will touch on some of the features that will help in terms of maybe some voting discrepancies and things. If you're using the system, that could help with that. And as we make policy changes and regulation changes going forward, future programming could be tied to those policy and reg changes. So if you're not using the system, that could be a disadvantage as well. And so that adds to the last point of less risk. And so if you're not using it, if your department's not using it and you want to use it or you want more information, please reach out to me and we can talk about that. And then our next slide, while we have you all here, we wanted to just point out a couple of other things sort of selfishly, but we'll be brief. So Kim, if you want to talk about the connection of faculty review processes.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. And Amy and I work together on a lot of these things, so we'll usually CC each other when different things are happening. One of the things that we wanted to point out is that there is and should be a connection between the different review processes that are happening, the annual reviews, the RPT and PTR. A couple of quick things. Regular reviews provide consistency, transparency, and accountability. And just so that both sides, so your college, your department, has made a statement as to someone's performance, and then that person knows how the college and department view their performance as well. Annual review should identify performance concerns or deficiencies if applicable, and faculty members must be aware of the areas that require attention. There's so many instances where someone may be causing some sort of an issue in the department, whether it's related to their teaching or their scholarship or something like that. But when you pull the annual review, either it wasn't done or it's just one sentence or, something really, really that provides limited information. So in the event of unsolved performance issues, prior documentation can support the decision to take additional action, and the lack of documentation is unfair to faculty. So, if you have a faculty member that's consistently underperforming, but you aren't writing this into the annual review, then whenever you get ready to make some additional action, whether it's related to their promotion or, does not meet in post-tenure review, there's nothing to go back to show that that person was on notice that there were any issues. And finally, it's just a risk management issue. Many of these reviews get cited in grievances, tenure denials, and lawsuits. And so the more documentation you have about providing people information about what they need to be doing, areas where they can grow, areas where they're doing well, those things are able to be used in actions to protect both yourselves and also the university. So please keep that in mind as you're going forward. Please use the RPT online system so that we can track everything appropriately and give consistent feedback. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Kim. I had one last selfish plug that I wanted to make, and this is related to tenure, not directly RPT process, but when departments are hiring someone from the outside with tenure, we just want to send this reminder out. This is in the policy. I know the language is a little confusing, but this is about how the votes are taken when you're hiring a new tenure track or tenured faculty member. 2 votes are required. The first vote is for the DVF to indicate support of the appointment, and then the second vote is to award rank, which may also include tenure. If it's an associate professor, obviously a professor. And so when I get these PRV 03 reporting forms for the Board of Trustees, when the tenure request is coming forward to the board, sometimes the numbers are not right. And so I know that we have some work to do to try to clarify this. But basically, if you're hiring a full professor, the top number on this form for appointment is going to be larger, right? Because that's going to be all the tenured faculty can vote on the appointment. The second number for rank and tenure status is going to be smaller because only the full professors can vote on rank and tenure status for a full professor hire. So the first thing I do when I get these forms is I look and see if it's a full professor hire. And if it is, and I notice, the top number is the same as the bottom number, and we had a voting problem, we had a misunderstanding. So I just wanted to bring this up. I know we have some new department heads as well, but this is all outlined in the tenure policy 05-2001. But again, just sort of a shameless plug for me that couple of circumstances where we're not, or situations where I know we're not understanding this correctly. And so we definitely want to help you with this. I know it can be confusing, but that was all that I wanted to touch on. So I think we will pause here before we transition and see if there were any questions. And I see one question: will the presentation slides be shared with us after the session? And yes, we are going to upload this webinar to RPT Online shortly, as soon as we can. So yes. Okay, well, I believe I will now turn things over to Sherrie and Bruce to talk about the radar to red transition.
Thank you, Amy, for including us in today's agenda. It's a pleasure to be here. So first, I'd like to provide some background for the format change that Amy mentioned. The Research Enterprise Data Initiative, RED for short, is building a system for NC State to manage different aspects of research, animal and human subjects protocols, sponsored project proposals and awards, conflict of interest records in a more integrated way than we've been able to do before. Our homegrown systems for managing these areas, which have served us very well for many years, didn't bring the degree of integration between these areas and with other campus systems that we need today. Last Monday, August 7th, we launched the proposal tracking and post-award management modules, making RED the system of record for sponsored programs, and Radar was retired. To be sure researchers and administrators can do their work, we brought more than 21,000 project records reaching back to 2016 from Radar to RED to be sure the resources needed for project management, closeout, audit, public records request would all be available in RED. And these records are associated with some 300,000 files of various sorts, Word, Excel, PDF. So this was a huge data conversion. But our faculty, of course, have careers that reach back further than that 2016 cutoff. So we needed a way to capture their entire NC State histories, drawing on both Radar and RED data. We looked to SAS Visual Analytics, NC State's enterprise platform, and some of you likely had seen SAS VA viewers in Marketplace First, the Graduate School, Institutional Strategy and Analysis dashboards, and other campus uses to create this tool that would be flexible enough to combine these similar but slightly different data sources from two systems to describe the sponsored programs dimension of each faculty member's career. We reviewed the design with the Provost Office and developed resources, including the how-to video on generating a report, that's available on the Provost Office site, and a direct link that would be constant throughout this transition. It was important to us that faculty who are going through the RPT process could find the report in a consistent place throughout the experience. Now that RED Sponsored Programs modules have launched, however, RPT report also is accessible from both the proposals and the post-award management modules within RED. If there are additional places where you think it would be useful for you or your faculty to find this link, please let us know and we'll ask for those to be added if the site owners agree. Well, the new format has a very different look for those of you who had seen the Radar-based reports before. It has a cover page that shows clearly the date range, and this would default to the range for which we have any project data in Radar or RED, and the date the project was the report was generated. It also has a summary page that's new to this version, where reviewers can see aggregate indicators of project activity before they turn to the detailed list of proposals and awards. Next, I'd like to touch on an occasional point of confusion for some of our faculty, and that's a perception we hear in Spark sometimes that only the Radar report, now the RED report, can be included in this section 3B of the dossier. And faculty may indeed have additional projects that aren't typically captured in a university enterprise system, but are important to telling their story. And these can include internal funding from college, university, or system programs. These often are funded by Ledger 2 or Ledger 3 budget transfers or access to phases that sponsored programs would not normally be aware of, but certainly are appropriate for a dossier. In some disciplines, there are competitive fellowships and other awards made directly to the faculty member that are important to the professional assessment. And faculty who have transferred to NC State during their academic careers might have prior activity to document. Now, especially important for this year, when the RED launch has regrettably put sponsored programs a bit behind in processing new activity since the end of July, and in exporting that activity to the dossier report, it will be valuable for faculty to know that they can add entries and annotate entries on the RED report where their current information is not displayed. For all of these circumstances, they may and should add the missing items and annotate entries that are not current. The authority to do this is in the reg, and it is acceptable to add pages and insert them after the system generated report for these proposals and awards we just described. Now, getting into the weeds just a little bit, we do have a mixed bag of these kinds of projects in RED now, based on what faculty elected to route through PINS, which is our proposal approval system at NC State. And of course, our offices, College and Central, try to be accommodating to what the faculty wish to see in their record. Generally speaking, we would prefer that faculty use the option to add pages for those projects that are not normally handled as sponsored research, but where those records did come through PINS already, we want our information to be correct. Faculty who see those internal awards, direct to them awards, things that are not current, can work with their college research offices. Each college should have a dedicated research office to provide the supporting documentation for our office to update information on internal and other non-sponsored research entries where they are already in red so that they have current information. One disclaimer, however, this SBA model does many things very well. We understand some departments are leveraging it for faculty activity reports and perhaps other purposes, but it's not so great for instant gratification. When sponsored programs is operating normally, updates entered in red will feed to the RPT report overnight. Currently, we have a greater lag that we're working hard to remedy. So if a faculty member needs to update a report immediately, whether it's going to external reviewers or an immediate need, their best avenue is to add and annotate. I'd be happy to entertain any questions. I'm sure Bruce would as well. Okay. We will be on for the rest of the session if something comes to mind. And if nothing right now, I'll be happy to hand off to David and Dan.
Looks like we have a question that this just came in.
Sure.
Is it okay to include radar report in this RPT cycle? That may be more for Amy or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amy, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, we mentioned just a little bit ago that there will be some limited circumstances whereby a radar report was generated, included in the dossier, and then sent out to external evaluators, maybe late spring, early summer. And we understand, everyone wants to keep the dossier consistent. And so we have said, yes, that is fine to have a radar report in those situations. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me, but the short answer is yes, we expect to see some of those, but of course, going forward, we would not. So hopefully that answers that question.
I think the next one might be a subset of one of mine, how to include NCALs or other internal grants. I'm feeling a little embarrassed that I don't know right off what NCALs is, and I probably should. But if it's an internal program that's funded through probably Ledger 2, Ledger 3, or gift funds, then an additional page would be appropriate. Does the department liaison count as an external? That might mean external reviewer. Amy, is that something you can speak to?
Yeah, the department liaison would not be considered an external reviewer. I don't know. I'm trying to think what stream this question might be going in to see if I can kind of expand upon that. But the department liaison would have access to see everything and would not be considered an external evaluator. So might need to elaborate on that question. I don't think I probably answered that appropriately, but feel free to reach out to me if you need to talk about that one further.
Okay, next one, if grants are added by annotation, will the faculty member also need to be responsible for removing them if unfunded or if not funded, or if funding ends? I'm not sure if that's a point in time question. I think at the time of the dossier prep, then whatever the current status is, that's the way the dossier would go forward. Amy, is that the right way to think of that? Or maybe I'm missing the point of the question.
Sorry, and I know this is kind of hard to do on the fly. So if grants are added by annotation, will the faculty member also need to be responsible for removing them if unfunded or funding ends? So Yes, I would think so, because otherwise we're not gonna have a way to know, right, if the funding ends or if it's unfunded. So yes, that, anything that the faculty member annotates to that section, they would then need to be responsible for editing or correcting as well.
And can faculty use oh, no, I dropped one. If a faculty member was at NC State prior to their faculty appointment, should we move the lever to faculty appointment date or use the date the system pulls? If a faculty member was at NC State prior to their faculty appointment, I'm not sure how to speak to that.
I'm wondering if they mean if they were in a different track. Maybe, for example, they were in the research track and then they got on the tenure track. And so we would want them to include all of their NC State information in that report.
And I don't think the red report would make a distinction if they were listed on the record. Bruce, is that correct?
What is the question for that again?
Yeah, if a
I'm not-
faculty member was listed, I'm going to turn it to the report context. If a faculty member was listed on a sponsored project record, that will appear on the red report regardless of the nature of their appointment at that time. So,
Yeah, I don't think the dates of their appointment would matter for that.
yeah.
Thanks.
Can faculty use red now for the final dossier, even if they used radar earlier for external evaluators? Kicking to the provost office on that.
Well, Sherrie, I'll kick back to you. The information is displayed differently, but basically should be the same.
Correct.
Right.
The difference on that as we go through the cycle is if one wanted updated information since whenever the report was sent out to external evaluators, radar isn't going to be available, will not contain any updated information. So if there's a desire or a need to update, then red will be your only option.
Okay.
Radar often only lists the sub-award amount. How do we get this information edited? I'm going to interpret when and recognize I could be interpreting wrong. Right, for incoming subawards, for example, if NC State is a subrecipient on an award to Indiana University, the award to NC State is the subaward that comes to us. So that's not an edit question, that's a correct representation of the award that came to NC State. But if that's not the situation you had in mind, I'd be happy to be corrected on what you're looking for. Do you edit? It seems to me that that's an annotation option. I wouldn't think we would want to lose the part of the overall larger award that comes to NC State. That is part of our sponsored project account. I would not see a downside to annotating what the prime award included unless the provost office has some objection to that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
But the ERA would not contain that. If my dossiers include radar instead of red, do I need the RPT reappointment candidates to pull red instead?
No.
You shaking your head.
Yeah, reappointment documents or dossiers don't go to external evaluators anyway, but if you've already, some people get a head start on preparing the dossiers in the spring, or if they're 12-month, they might be working on them in June or July. And so, again, we're going to allow that radar for this year. So unless something's changed or needs to be updated, you should be fine with the radar reports that you've already put together in the dossiers.
What a great set of questions. Thank you, audience. Okay, David and Dan, I think you're up.
David's gonna
I'm
take it
gonna go ahead
away.
and share my screen. Yep.
I will know for everyone that we are working with the folks behind the RED system to make sure that we have also access to that data. So if there are future integrations or reports or anything that we can do to the RPT online processes using that data, that is something that we'd be interested in your feedback on.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm David Sterling. I'm the primary sole developer behind this RPT online system. Most of what I'm covering today is in the handbook, which is a PDF that's available from the help page or from the RPT menu. So if you want to follow along in that, it'll show you some of the steps that I'm going through today. Going to cover just a little bit about the help resources, the updates to the external evaluations feature, some features to help you navigate the dossier, and lastly, online voting feature for the DBF. So we'll go ahead and get started logging in as a department head. Most of what we're doing is going to be from the department head view, which is the same as the RPT liaison view if you're a liaison. Help features, the main one is at the bottom here. So if you're running into trouble, click this. Tell us what process you're having trouble with and send us a message and we'll get that ticket answered as soon as we can. As I mentioned, there's other help resources here, videos, as well as this recording will be available on the videos page, but we'll also put something on the dashboard to let you know when that's available. The handbook, as I mentioned, is here. You can also navigate it from here. Okay, so I'm going to go over briefly the external evaluation feature and updates. Previously, before you get started on your external evaluations, we had to load in the reviews. Some of you probably get started before May when this happens. So we added a page at the top here, RPT external evaluations. If you go to this page, you'll be able to add new external evaluators, whether or not there is a review. If there is a review, you can select it here. If no reviews have been added, you can assign it directly to the faculty member. And when the review is added, those external evaluations will get added to their dossier. I've added a few already, but I'll go ahead and do an example for you. The only required fields are the name, the title, the institution, and proposed by. Save this. Is this a bug? Maybe. Okay, that's unexpected. Maybe
Always
because they didn't.
guaranteed that during our demonstration that we always come up with some bug.
Maybe I should select the actual person with the review.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and it was added here. So you can click on any one of these and it'll bring you to a more detailed page, which kind of gives you an overview of the steps in the evaluation process. It starts with obviously proposing the external evaluator, and everything that you add is automatically given that status. You can choose to update the status as you go along, or if you use the system to manage this, the system will update the status as well. So proposed contacted is the second step, which if you propose and then you've maybe reached out to the evaluator to say, hey, do you want to send us a letter? And then when they reply, you can set it to agreed. And then lastly, once they've agreed, you can use the system to send out the external evaluation materials, which you can also set up here. So let's go ahead and look at some of the features of the materials that you can send. We've added a cover page, which is basically the request letter, template letter that Amy talked about earlier that was updated. So that's now the cover of those materials by default. We've also added a table of contents, and if you're used to adding links, those links will also be added to the table of contents. And then lastly, the statement of faculty responsibilities seems like one of the key documents that's included in a lot of materials. So by default, that's also shown. Some additional settings here relate to the request letter itself, whether or not you want to show the percentages of the SFR on the request letter. You can choose that, as well as if you wanted to include the candidate statement from 1C, you can also do that. Lastly, here is a description of the materials that you sent to the evaluators. So you'll want to update this as you go along. It's not automatic, but we'll go ahead and say CV SFR 5 scholarly works. Hit save. Okay, and if we go here to manage our materials, you'll see we can rearrange these, we can upload documents. Maybe we will upload the CV. We'll just do a test for now. And then you can view these materials, and you'll see here, this is the copy of the letter, and then at the table of contents, we added the CV, the SFR, that was that document that we added. Links are added here, and those will go here. And as I said, you can rearrange these documents. So if you did, for some reason, want the CV to come first, it should update that. It doesn't look like it's doing that right now. Maybe you can't update past SFR. That's something I need to check on. Okay, so you kind of have an idea of how to set your materials up. Now you maybe want to send those materials to the external evaluator, and you need two pieces of information to do that. First would be the due date, the time when you want this letter to be submitted by. We'll go ahead and say September 1st this year. And the second piece of information is email address for the person. Go ahead and hit save. And now you'll see that you're able to send the request email. In addition to that, there's also this manage contact, which you can use as you like. Just a way for you to record any contacts that you might have with the external evaluator. Maybe you sent them an email and they agreed to it, or maybe you called them on the phone, and you can leave notes here as well. But essentially, that's all you need to send the materials. So if you want to, you could send them right away. Confirm that you want to send this email, and now you'll see the request has been sent. The status is updated. Let me see if I can show you a preview of this email. Yeah. Here's what the email would look like, addressed to the person that you sent. It's the same template letter. Oops. This link takes you to that PDF. Oh, actually, it takes you to this page, sorry, where they can click to view the PDF, submit their bio here directly, or and also upload their evaluation letter. So all of this information can be fed in here. And the system should update as it goes along. So this evaluator has completed everything that they need to, and it's ready to go. So you might look at this page. It's a little different to what you're used to if you maybe have done this before in the past. There are a lot of different features on it, jumping around to different evaluators if you need to. But there's also still the regular view that you have in the RPT review itself. So you can click up here, go down to that section, and you'll see that same information is reflected down here. Bio letter, you can choose to do it in here as well, and update that information. So if that's something you're used to is doing it directly from the review page, that's good. But if the review doesn't exist yet, you will need to go to the external evaluations page first. Okay. Another thing I wanted to mention was the settings up here. And so this applies to all of your external evaluations. You can set now a response letter due date for all your response letters. If you say you want everyone to respond on September 1st, you can do that. Save settings and apply retroactively if you've already updated some records for this cycle and you want to update them from this page, you need to click that. Otherwise, you can click Save Settings. Again, if you want to apply the same template for all of your materials sent, CV, SFR, and we already had filled that out for one, so we can hit Save Settings, and maybe we don't want to override the existing setting for that particular evaluation that we sent out. And then over here on the right is information that's included on your request letter. The phone number is optional, but we do pull that in from the HR records if it's publicly listed, email as well. But if perhaps maybe if you wanted to use an email that was accessible to both the department liaison and the department head, maybe you have your department head email alias here. These are all things that you can configure across the board for your external evaluations. And this is the main page. So as these add up, the search feature might not be so useful, but and there's only 3 there, but as you go along, you can sort these and search through them. So that kind of covers the external evaluations updates. Again, if you need to know more about it or want to see more in depth, the RPT handbook does have this information documented in it as well, in a new section. So feel free to take a look at that. Right now,
before we
yep.
move on, could you go back to the settings there for a moment? I think
Sure.
you skipped over the notification reminder email.
I did, sorry, yes. This is a new feature as well. So by default, when you set this date now, if it's approaching 2 weeks and you haven't received a letter from any of your evaluators, it will send you an email saying, hey, it looks like these evaluators haven't responded yet. So it kind of reminds you to check in on that. Maybe you need to substitute an evaluator, and you can set this to whatever you like. But yeah, that is also a new feature.
And you also have a couple questions.
Okay. If I have numerous external evaluators who haven't replied or didn't agree that they'll do it or that they didn't have time, can we delete them? I don't see why not. That's up to you. There's various ways to keep track of that. So you can outright delete them if you want to. And actually, I did notice I forgot to put the delete button on this page in particular. So that's something I need to add, but you can delete them directly from the external evaluation section here. If you click this, say, are you sure you want to delete them? We'll delete Smithson. That is one way to do it. I will remind myself to add a button to this page for delete as well.
Also, when you are on the contact stage, you have the ability, if I recall, to note whether or not they've accepted or declined. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. And that's kind of like what you can set in this status and update it as you like. And so that was one of the other contacted, agreed, depending on where you are. If you use the manage contact to contact them, the status will automatically update to contacted. The agreed one is something that you will have to set on your own if that's something that you want to do. But it's up to you. It kind of depends on how many evaluators are you contacting? How hard is it for you to keep track of all of those people and where they are at in the process of sending you letters or not sending you letters? If they declined, you can set it to that, and this will still show up in the list, but it's in the decline status, and they won't show. None of the evaluators will show up in the dossier until they have the bio in the letter. So if you're missing them, they're not there. Also, if you don't add the list of materials sent, section B will not generate at this point. So this is something that you do have to do. I'm not sure why it didn't. That might just be on here, but it should have copied through here, so I'll need to check on that. But yeah, this section won't generate, and then this section will only generate if you have both the bio and the letter as well. By default, if you're using the online system and you used it to contact, used it to send the materials, we're automatically importing the template letter on section A, so you don't have to click the import button. It'll be done as soon as you send the first set of materials out, which this is the updated letter here. Let me look at some of these questions. Okay, so we answered that one. Do you have an idea of the number of departments that use the RPT Online feature to manage external evaluations? We do have that number, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. It's not a majority, I'll tell you that much, but I want to say it's somewhere in the range of 15 to 20 departments that are using the external evaluations feature to send materials to their evaluators. So there is some considerable use, but by no means a majority. So if there's a reason why you're hesitant to use it, please feel free to reach out to us and let us know what those concerns are, and we can hopefully get those addressed for you. What does the subject line say in the email to the evaluator? It says, can I read it here? This is blocking up top here, but can I expand this? It says NC State University : evaluation of Dr. whoever the doctor was. It's kind of a generic title. If for some reason you want to customize it or need to customize it, let us know and we can add that in as well. Can we add multiple emails to evaluations so their response can be received by liaisons as well? Are you saying that they're emailing you the responses directly and then you're uploading them? It might be possible to, it might be as simple as going to the settings, going to the settings page and, adding another email here.
I believe that might, I think that might mess with your template though.
It might.
That's how you included that.
It might look all right. Let's see what it looks like.
To answer another question that came in, the reminder is for the liaison, not for the external evaluator. You still have to contact them yourself. You can resend the request from within the system.
Doesn't appear to be updating any of those settings right now, so I don't know if that's part of the demo or that's a bug. But I think it should work right out of the bat. If you just add a comma in there, because there's nothing, it just includes whatever text is in that field.
If you would send us a request to RPT online, we can check into that. It would also be good to know why you're looking for this, just so we can make sure it's the most appropriate way to do that.
For time's sake, I've sent out the invitation message using the new template downloaded at the Provost website. Requested him or her to send us back the assessment through email. Since I did not know that we could do it through the RPT online, is this acceptable practice? Yes, it's probably the most common practice to send it through email. If we remove an evaluator's name due to no response, then the evaluator sends a letter. Do we have to include their letter? That's kind of more maybe an Amy question. I'm not sure. Amy, do you know about that?
So, yeah, I was just pulling up to make sure I'm remembering exactly, but all letters that are received before the deadline for finishing the dossier should be included in section 7, no matter how many. However, letters that are received too late to be included in all phases of the review should not be included at all. So if you reached out to someone and they just didn't really respond, but then all of a sudden a letter shows up and it's before the review process has started, then yes, it has to be included. So hopefully that's answering the question.
The last question, I've been using RPT Online to manage external reviews, so I know we set up her materials. If for some reason, faculty member who's going up for promotion to full is not included in the list of 2020, okay. Is that, I'm guessing maybe they're not included in this dropdown? But I can double check on that for you. If they're not included in the dropdown, you can also add them directly from their section 7 on the dossier itself. So you can add them right here, click add external evaluation. Creative names, professor. So you should be able to add them. Yeah, you can add them directly here as well. So if they're not on that page for some reason, but I'll check on that for you and see why those names are not listed. Another question, since no external reviewers will be in the dossier until they actually submit, I see the benefit to keeping all proposed reviewers in there for future faculty. However, is there a way we can access previous years of RPT online for that purpose?
Sounds like a feature request.
So are you saying, I'm guessing you're wanting to access the previous reviewers from previous years, maybe, is that what I'm understanding here? Yes, they are not on there currently, but it shouldn't be a problem to look back. We just kind of added this feature, so there wouldn't be nothing to look back on currently, but going forward, definitely.
I think we have discussed this. It was sort of a question of how often do we have repeat reviewers? And that honestly was something we were actually going to look at as we were starting to actually track the external reviewers, because that seemed like something that maybe the provost office might want to keep an eye on at some point. But that is something, as David said, we've only just started tracking this. So how we use it moving forward, or what kind of reporting we do on that information hasn't really been fully discussed yet.
And I know we do have a backlog of the previous years of the externals. They're just not in the format of the current external evaluations. So we could import or backlog those external evaluations if you're interested in kind of having a Rolodex of these are all the people we've contacted over the years for various reviews.
If you would send an email to RPT online, with that request and some background, that is certainly something that we can look into.
The evaluators are there, the faculty member is not listed. Okay, the only thing is then the review has not been added, so I could only suggest you contact the college liaison to make sure they update their spreadsheet that's shared with the provost office to add that review in, because it should be there. It's okay. Is there any more questions on external evaluations? One more. Since no external reviewers will be in the dossier until they actually submit, I see a benefit to keeping all proposed reviewers in there for future fact. Okay. However, is there we can access? Okay, wait, that's the same one. I reread it different. This question is for future if possible. Say a faculty is promoted, can the system generate an automated email to the external evaluators thanking them for letters and also informing the faculty member is promoted? I don't know about the latter part, if that would be allowed.
Amy is shaking her head at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think that's allowed. That's part of their personnel file, that final decision. So that would be something they would have to share, the faculty candidate themselves with them.
But I think we could definitely do something for thanking them for the letters. That shouldn't be a problem.
Certainly, yeah, true. Once they have
Submitted it.
uploaded their final review, David, do they receive any kind of email currently?
No,
So,
they do
yeah,
not.
we could certainly look at doing a thank you email.
And have that customizable to them, I guess, or a template. I don't know.
Yeah, we can come up with something.
Okay. Let's see. I'm going to just quickly go over. Oh, so that means we're also not allowed to let. We're not allowed to let them know a faculty member is promoted. I don't know if you're not allowed to, but
Yeah, we can talk offline if you want to contact me about this. We've had this question from department heads before who want to know if, for example, they're allowed to inform the DVF or the whole department, on the news that a faculty member was promoted. And we've said with the person's permission. So with the faculty member who was promoted's permission in writing, yes, you may share the good news that I was promoted. Thank you very much. Then that's fine. So, obviously you just have to be sensitive because there could be cases where somebody was and somebody wasn't. And so it takes a little discretion there, but we can talk more about this offline if you want to follow up with me.
okay. Oops. My screen freezing. Okay. I'm gonna just quickly go over a couple of dossier features that maybe you know about, that maybe you don't, that'll help you and your faculty kind of navigate these pages, because sometimes they become long and there's a lot of details on them. So at the bottom here, you'll notice these 3 buttons. And so these work on a lot of different pages here, but expand all and you get everything on this page. And collapse all obviously is bringing them back down. And if you're at the bottom, you can go back to the top. So these are kind of useful features if you're jumping around and find yourself scrolling a lot. That could be helpful. Also, if you're viewing the dossier PDF, and I think this only works in Chrome and maybe Firefox, we've added a feature here. If you click the document outline icon here, it'll show you a breakdown of the dossier as well as each subsection. So if you wanted to jump to a particular page, it's easy to do that. And as stuff gets added, of course, this list gets longer. But those are 2 kind of helpful things that I think get overlooked from time to time. Okay, so I'm going to go over the online voting bit and then conclude. So I think that's probably most people know how to upload documents. If you don't, it's this button. upload. Again, you'll need to request the candidate's signature before, if you're sharing this with your DVF online. It's not a requirement of the voting. You don't have to share it, as again, some people aren't doing that, but maybe you're only doing online voting. But we're gonna go ahead and click the request, and in this test, it should sign the dossier, put the little stamp there that we signed it today, even though we didn't. Okay, so online voting. So let's say at this point, the DVF has met, they're ready to vote on the case. For most units, and I say most because there are a couple of exceptions to this, your DVF should be automatically configured for you based on the faculty ranks. So this is the DVF page here. For the individual case, if you're trying to go from this page, you can click on this link, record votes on DVF page. And this will bring you to a page of all of the DVF groups for your department, which include the tenure track faculty groups, as well as the professional track faculty groups. So those are the two distinctions here. And again, you'll see these expand collapse here. We can use this to see the full lists of who makes up those DVFs. Okay, so this is the case we're working on here. You'll notice these are the DVF members for this case. If you need to change their eligibility, you'll do that clicking the eligible button. Maybe they're ineligible because they're on the college committee. That's pretty much the only case I would think of that they'd be marked ineligible. You can save that and they'll no longer be included in the eligible vote count. You'll see that it's 4 instead of 5 now. So this is a way for you to manage who's eligible, who's not. If they're recused on a particular case, you'll want to do that beforehand. And to do that, you'll click limited. Maybe I should put in parentheses recused/related, but the two cases usually is if it's related or recused. And if they're related, you probably need to put that in the settings under related persons so that that's a more of a permanent setting. But if they are related, it will show in this as well, automatically import from that section. So we'll just hit recuse on that so you can see what that looks like. So they're limited now. You kind of know when you go in here, you'll see one is recused. So again, like I said, you can continue entering the votes in manually here as you've done, but we also have the online voting down here, which you have the option to send an email to the faculty. I'll go ahead and trigger that this time and start the voting. And I can show you what that looks like. Online voting is started for the candidate. Please use the button below to view the voting page. So here you can see status of those. They've already voted because they're recused. I don't know why it says missing. We'll go ahead and log in as someone who can vote. And this is what a professor would see, a member of the DVF, when they log in. When the voting is enabled, there's a button on their dashboard. They can click that and all the cases that they're voting on will appear here at once. So I don't want to confuse, but let me jump back really quickly. You can start multiple at the same time as well. Maybe you don't want to send an email the second time around because it's a link to the same page. But now the professor has 2 things to vote on. And so there's 3 options here. And of course, if they're the recused, those should have already been entered in. So maybe 4, maybe against. And they have submitted their votes now. And so the department head logging in can go in and see, okay, this person has voted. And as the votes trickle in, if all the votes have been submitted, the voting will close automatically. If you're happy with the amount of votes that have been submitted, you can click the end voting, and that will end the voting for those particular cases. So let's see, end the voting. Only one person voted, 4 were missing. And then maybe you wanted to reset the voting because there was a mistake. You can do that, but then everyone has to recast their votes online, or you can just say, I want to enter my votes in instead this time. So those are kind of your options here with online voting. That's pretty much it. If there are any questions on online voting, I'll take those now. I think in the past it added the signer's name. Now it says sign via DocuSign. Can it be redone to put the person's name? Sure. And I think this is kind of moving forward. We're trying to phase out DocuSign in this application of it because it seems to cause more headaches than help. So we will be adding our own signatures to these documents in the future, and that way there won't be as much headache with recognizing whether or not something was signed. And that goes for the SFRs as well. Those seem to be having problems with DocuSign. Could you point me to the letter template used when sending materials to the evaluator? The template letter is on the Provost website.
I can grab that real quick.
Okay.
David, the first question about signed by a DocuSign, is that was that not a temporary when it's in the middle of an envelope, that you were
Correct.
displaying that, because the actual signature, we haven't actually gotten that yet until the envelope's completed, until everyone has signed.
Correct. Yeah. We don't insert the actual signed document into here until the very end, because if we do, then we end up not being able to update parts of this cover form as the process goes along, which caused more problems. So we decided we'll let you know that it was signed once it's signed, and then at the end we're inserting the signed document. But yeah, I could see how this is maybe not as easy to spot as a handwritten signature, and so that we're aiming to fix that as well.
Although, as David mentioned, as we move away from DocuSign, it will also become a moot point.
True. I mean, I think we will still show some sort of signature or their name there, but yeah, this maybe is not as helpful to you. Okay, well, that concludes my demonstration. If you have any comments or suggestions or run into any problems, please feel free to contact us. Again, this is the easiest way to do it. And we'll try to answer those as soon as they come in.
And as I mentioned before, we're trying to continuously streamline any of these faculty review processes that we can. So if you have any suggestions, anything that you keep running into that you think we could fix, please let us know.